group today. So I know a few of you. It's great to see you guys. Kimberly, Chris, Barbara, Peter, Tim. Um, I kind of want to get a little bit from you guys first. So how long, Mike, have you been a part of the group? I'd like to get a sense of where people are in the process.
A
So
year
we're
and
not
a half.
just talking. How long have you been here, Michael?
About a year and a half, I think.
Excellent. Are you working memoir or what are you working on?
I'm working on Pearls from Ancient Wisdom with them.
Oh, nice. Oh, I like that. Yeah, most of my writing is more introspective and then responses to things that I've read. Then I don't do well with my experience. My memoir sucks. Let's see. And Jenna, how long have you been and what are you working on?
It's been about 10 months, and I'm working on a book about meditation and Vedic philosophy and how to apply that to daily life.
Very cool. Wow. Excellent. And Dr. Paula, I've seen you
Hello,
before.
hello.
Hi.
Yes, Paula Perez is my name. I completed a memoir in October. I've been with the group for about 15 months, and I'm currently working on two other books, but I'm very interested in turning my memoir into a screenplay.
Okay. Well,
It's
that's
a
fun. So feel
unique
free to
story.
engage and ask questions because the point of this is to everything that I do when I get to public speak or teach the production stuff and the things that I do, it really is so important for it to come from the perspective of what you're actually looking to do and what it is you're dealing with. Because, like I was saying before we started, there's no one way to do all of this stuff. That's what's crazy. There's not this, method like what Anna's teaching you here for the book and the self-publishing. It doesn't exist in motion picture and television because it has all to do with who you know and how you can create leverage and how you can get yourself in the door. And so that's a whole other game. But just taking your material and thinking of it visually, that's an easy thing to talk about and ways to maybe approach it. So Amanda, how about you?
Yeah, I've been in the group for about a year and a half now, and I'm working on my memoir.
Okay, cool. Well, and Chris, let's just catch up on where you guys are in your process because I'm super excited about that.
Well, I've got a few things going on, but the Nine Lives series, the pilot has been written. I'm actually meeting with the writer next week in New Orleans on Wednesday morning. Needs some work, but it's a good first draft. So
Yeah,
I'm
it's a
really
process
excited about
forever,
that.
man. Even all the way through production. It's just part
Yeah,
of the deal. It's never, even after post, you're like, oh,
yeah, yeah.
oh. Well,
The other,
congratulations. I'm really
thank
excited for
you.
you.
Thank you. The other quick thing is I was telling Tim and Barbara, I just yesterday I came up with a new book idea, which I have
Oh,
not had any inspiration to write for over a year now, and now I have an inspiration. So
oh,
uh,
right on.
yeah, I
Good.
just
Well, I hope to hear about that maybe on Sunday when we
yeah,
see each other. I'd
yeah,
love to hear that.
I will talk.
Awesome. Awesome. Kimberly, what are you doing? What are you working on now?
Hi, well, I finally submitted my manuscript to an editor
Mm,
at the end of December, and so I'm waiting for the returns on that. And good communication with this woman who's doing it and having fun in the process,
mm.
and kind of got a whole new sense of motivation about it. Um, I've been working on it since the beginning.
That's so good, though.
And yeah, I still have a lot of energy about it, so it's good.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
And Peter, what's going on in your world now?
He's showing up to see if I can get back in a writing groove. It's been
Mm,
a long time since I've written anything besides just morning pages. So I'm doing just some journaling here. I've got a kind of guidebook to dig in and do some writing, and I'm using that to see what gets the juices going.
awesome. Okay. Barbara, what are you doing now? I know you have got some new ideas.
I just finished writing my second book, which is kind of a guidebook on how to talk to grieving people,
Mm,
what to say, what to do, what not to say, what not to do.
right.
So, yeah, that's in its first draft of, or its first round of editing right now. So, yeah.
Congratulations. That's really cool. All right. So, I think a really good way to approach this is just to think that we all want it to be seen, read, heard, that, and when we take something from a book to the screen, everything that I've done that's been police related, military related, or anything like that, because we're going to do the most accurate, it's going to be the exactly, and then you get there and you realize that sometimes it just doesn't translate cinematically. And so you've got all these experts that you hear their expert opinion, and then you talk them into doing it the way that works the most visually, which completely goes against everything that is there. And a lot of the times it's the same thing with taking a book to the screen. Timothy and I are working together on Joe, and it's some things are sliding around as they always should with a story anyway, because we often think only in a linear fashion, and sometimes that's not the way to go, and maybe your piece isn't written that way. But it's what Anna always says: show me, don't tell me. And everybody's first draft of almost every script ends up with dialogue that's telling me the story versus the pictures that will actually sell that moment, that emotion, that situation. And it becomes, a constant challenge to work with people to think in those terms. So just like with a book, when you're challenging yourself to write a screenplay, or you're working with someone else that is going to translate some of your work into a screenplay, you want to get that first draft out, the puke draft, just get it all in, just get it out, so that you can get someone else's eyes on it and begin to see what was in your head versus what's actually on the page that can be understood by another human in the way that you intended it. And we just get what I call snowblind. In my memoir and anything I ever write, I'm completely snowblind, and I have to share it with someone else, and they just tweak things around, and Tim takes my work and just moves a sentence around or a paragraph to a different place, and it completely changes it, and I go, wow, how could I not see that? Well, I'm snowblind. And so one of the things that I really challenge people to do if you write a first draft of a script is to duplicate that file immediately when you feel like you're done with it, and then immediately remove all the dialogue, everything that a character says. Take it out, and then read just your action and your description and your parenthetical, and see if you still have a story. Because if you don't, then you're off, not to a good start, because you really want it to be just as clear, not in novel form, not in long paragraph. It's got to be the most minute, micro-fiction-y kind of way of deliberately setting the tone, describing that character, describing a texture, describing the moment, the emotion, and all that stuff. And so it's a real art. And it's so funny that in all the years that I've spent talking with writers, I've written 2 short screenplays myself, but just because I work doing what I do, it has been so hard to find a consistency with writing, because some of you probably don't know what I do, but I work as an assistant director in motion picture and television production for the last 35 years, which is a 90 to 100 hour a week endeavor every time. And for years I didn't say no. So I just stayed in this machine and would, take a couple of months off in between things and just think, okay, during this time I'm going to do this. Well, when you're operating on that much cortisol and that much adrenaline in the pressure of the environment that I work in, because I work on some pretty large, notable kind of action-oriented, stressful things, and somehow I loved that until I started writing my memoir and started looking at the reality that all that I was doing was dissociating from a traumatic childhood. And even though I've been sober now, coming up on 17 years in February, if I don't mess it up this month, I haven't dealt with any of that. And so that's where the memoir process brought me, to looking at that. So I literally had to step away from literally all of it for a year before the pandemic, and was getting into the writing process. And then the pandemic happened, and then we ended up here with this group with Anna because of something she had to cancel, a memoir weekend that she had to cancel. And so it's funny to me that how many writers I work with that send me their material, even though they don't reading my screenplays, it's that I read and I love to give notes. It's kind of like being an editor, I guess, is the thing. And because of the relationships I've built with writers over the years in television and in the movies that I've worked on, I learned to be able to solve what we have as production problems creatively, not telling them we can't afford it, not telling them we can't do that sequence, but just coming up with, because I have both a story mind and a logistic mind. I'm very fortunate to have both sides of the brain working most of the time. Sometimes you wouldn't know by listening to me talk sometimes, but so it's been a really fun process to go through that with people. So, like I was mentioning previously, there's a whole cadre of people out there in the entertainment industry that look at upcoming book lists and make deals with publishers and authors and things before they even put a book out to get the rights to it. So the hardest thing is, you may think you've got a movie in mind, with your piece, but how do you build yourself a bit of a team around you as you're writing, as you're planning on, self-publishing? How would you get someone in Hollywood interested in it? And that's the most complicated part. There's the path that you write the book and you write the screenplay yourself, and you begin to look for someone to help mentor you through the process, and you look for a name to put on that script with your name. I can give an example of something like that happening. In 1993, I worked on an HBO project that was like a television movie for HBO with Leslie Linka Glatter, who is now the president of the Directors Guild of America. And she is a prolific producer-director. She ran the, now I'm losing the name of the project. It's Homeland. She ran Homeland for almost all of its run. She's an incredible human. She had the opportunity to direct this piece written by a guy named Lance Gentile, who was a doctor who had written this thing about an intense city hospital. And he tried to shop this thing as a series for about 4 years back then. Couldn't get anybody to bite, but HBO said, we really like this pilot, so we're interested in just doing the pilot as a one-off. And it was a thing that, I think when we shot it, it was called Slow Bleed, because it was kind of like the, slowly dying emergency room thing going on and all these people in the emergency room. And then it came out, I think, under Code Blue, might have been what it was actually came out under. It was the pilot to ER. He had been trying to shop ER, and no one would bite because Lance was just this doctor who had written this thing. And throughout that process with HBO, he was still not satisfied. He still had the rights to the entire thing. He just had given them, you can do the pilot, and then for a certain amount of time, he couldn't do anything with it. A couple years later, after it had aired and done that, he met Michael Crichton. And Michael Crichton liked what he had done enough that he put his name on it. And Lance, then it became ER. It was literally the exact same project and script. So there are situations where things like that can happen, where you find that mentor, you find that person that, has that value and that credibility to it. And that used to be kind of one of the only ways that something like that could happen. But, once we shut down for the pandemic and we turned off all entertainment being produced, there was more of an opportunity for a while. And you saw it. Everything on Netflix started to suck because it wasn't done by seasoned professionals on any level. And you just go, wow, how did we go from some interesting stuff to I don't even know what I'm watching now? Because there was such a rush to fill the void. So now we're back where all these companies are now pulling away. So it's going to be harder for kind of independent or unknowns to get themselves back in there. But that shouldn't stop any of us, because we're the kind of people that, you get on that bus and you ride that bus long enough, entertainment, writing, whatever it is, the longer you're on the bus, each year, the closer to the front you get, because people get off the bus. That was an analogy that was given to me by an actor that I was working with a long time ago. He's like, kid, I see you as, being one of those guys that's going to be really good if you just stay on the bus. And I didn't understand what he meant. He explained, he goes, yeah, I got on the bus 25 years ago. Now I'm in about the first 3 rows. I make about $125,000 a year, barely, as an actor, but that's all I do. I don't do anything else. I have stayed on the bus, and so many people have had family members go ill and they realize they can't survive in Los Angeles anymore, and they go back home. They have children realize they can't do the up and down, and so they get off the bus. And when you're still on the bus, you continue to build relationships and you move forward. And so all of this is that relationship building stuff. And Chris can tell you that as well. I mean, how long have you been working on trying to get this series shaped around the piece in New Orleans?
Oh, the whole process started about 12 years ago. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
These overnight successes and these sensations, if you really listen to them speak, they were at the end of the rope of decades, or at least 5 to 7 years worth of pain, sticking in the same direction. And they actually, a lot of them, a lot of us actually give up at a certain point, and that surrender is actually when something happens, because there's a certain, thing about obsession and drive versus kind of catching a flow and letting things unfold. So it's been a really interesting process in the last couple of years, because I've been just exhausted from being on the sets and doing that and not being able to be creative in my own right. And I'm creative in what I do. I solve, complicated problems creatively, and, the stuff that I work on gets on the screen and it looks really cool, but it's pretty unfulfilling when you're the guy that's just there to make it happen, and all the creatives are having a great time and they don't have any acknowledgement for what it takes to actually make it happen. They think that their contribution was the biggest part, and you're just like, oh my God. So I've really begun to back away and look at that and try to make more deliberate decisions, which is terrifying, because it's been my livelihood, but my livelihood did not allow me to have a life, if that makes sense, and certainly didn't allow me to have a creative life. And I'm an early riser and would try to do things, hour, half hour a day and all of that. But it's been really interesting to become unfettered and realize that that floundering didn't help, and then to start engaging with Tim on his piece and trying to do that, and then him looking at my piece. And that's what the whole thing becomes. It's sort of, how can you build a relationship with someone? Even a film student studying screenplay is an option, because you never know where that person's going to end up, if they have the drive and if they resonate with whatever it is that you are putting out on the table. And that's what you look for in these creative partnerships, because it's not a linear A=B process. You've got to be in it to win it, and literally in it for the long haul, and be patient and let it happen. But when it comes to actually adapting something, which is a really fun conversation, because Tim and I are in the middle of it right now, going through his outline. It's very much a similar process. We call it a Bible, but you come up with, if it's a feature film, you just come up with a synopsis and boil it down to what is the beginning, middle, and end, who are the specific characters, and what's a bit of an arc. And for a Bible, you go through an entire season and essentially a paragraph or two for each episode, and what you hope to do over a season, and what you hope to do if you get it 3, 4, 5 seasons, because people want to see something that oh, this could go on and we could explore these characters, and then looking and thinking about, is there something that is marketable, or is there some sort of a tie-in opportunity, not to be gross and disgusting, but each of us, it's not about commercial, it's about characters have proclivities, and they have things that they like, and there's ways to weave those things in and look for different support. And so I try to think in the very beginning of reading something, hearing about a character, what other opportunities would exist to do some sort of tie-in, to put them into a big corporation, that having that character in the corporation makes them look good, and it's not some negative thing about this organization. And how do you build something around those kinds of environments so that it becomes a win-win for someone else to kind of maybe invest in your process, and that they can gain from it, because every organization benefits from story. Advertising is not as important as story, and the story behind the story, and why do we do what we do, and who are the people that are doing what we're doing, and that, in my opinion. So that's sort of the way that I try to approach a lot of those things. And another interesting thing that we see happening now, and I'm actually in this conversation with David Rocklin, I'm reading his book, and it's this historical dramas that literally veer so far from history, but because we have a culture that doesn't read history, they begin to think that drama is the history. And his piece is very much that. It's about a real, Nigerian prince that literally has gone through this thing and ends up in England in the 1800s, I think it is. And you go, wow, that'd be fun to do, but now am I misleading people in this? So it's an interesting world to live in, to see people complaining now about historical dramas, because that's where they think they're getting their education, you know. And you look at what's happening, you know, culturally in our country. It's how we're doing it. We're all telling stories, and people are believing it, and it now becomes the you know, actual climate, which is strange. So Paula, let's talk about your piece and what your story is, because I think I remember a bit about it. Now, this is that you ended up staying chaste for a long time. Is it? Yeah. Okay. So because there is
Yes.
an absolute market for that, and
Exactly.
most of those movies are pretty. You know, I'm a believer, and I really struggle with the preaching to the choir type of movie.
Correct. Yes.
You know, my movie it makes you think you're headed there. This movie, I just got to produce a movie last year. It was kind of amazing that we went against every grain of what a pastor could or should do in a particular situation, except it goes right in line with the words of the guy that I believe, not the organization that I think tells me to drink its Kool-Aid. And we're having a pretty interesting response from people. So
That's
tell
awesome.
me your story and how it, you know, in a short version, what it looks like to you if you were doing it as a feature, or are you thinking a series?
Feature. Yeah, feature. I don't know that there's enough content for a series.
Right.
But at the age of 16, I decided and made a decision that I was not going to have sex until I married. What I could not know, and obviously did not know, is that it would take 33 years for that to happen. So throughout the memoir, I show how I just wrestled with things. One of the overarching themes is delayed, not denied. And I talk about how there was delaying in terms of my career choice. I started out in tech and then went into education. I talk about when I went for my doctorate, how I never really got accepted, but decided I wasn't going to listen. I was going anyway and wound up getting a 4.0. So they had to accept me, all of those types of things. So the theme of delayed, not denied. And I liked him in his review of the book, said you would think from the title that it is preachy. And I appreciate that he said it was not. You know, it was just a genuine expression for me of the grace of God. And in it, I shared the contrast with my family. I had a grandmother that was raped at 16. I had a grandfather that had 3 kids and a 4th on the way at 16. Wow. I had a mother who said, I'm not going to do any of that. I want to be a nurse. So at 16, she was just very driven. You know, she went to Carnegie Hall, played violin, just that type of thing. I had a father who, his mother, he was the product of the rape. And as a result, of course, his mom had some trauma attached to it. She wound up getting married and left my dad and one of his brothers with his grandmother. So I talk about just all of the drama in regards to that, but ultimately the grace of God and the restoring power of faith in him.
Wow. So how does your book open?
The book opens with me looking in the mirror, describing, wow, not bad for a 49-year-old virgin. And then I do a flashback to, you know, I talk about the fact that the world that we live in is just all about sex. So people to think that someone can live in this society and not be screwing around, it seems impossible. But I show that with Christ, all things are possible. And then I talk about the decision at 16. I went to a conference and the circumstances surrounding that. I do a flashback to the story of my grandparents and my parents, and then I go into my story.
Yeah, that's interesting because it does feel to me like just knowing the history and the impact, because, you know, one of those things is absolutely a trauma that carries down. It literally carries through generations, as I'm learning about trauma in my own life and what that does. And that's a very powerful thing to incorporate into the character, that even though this is a decision that character has made, but there's actually a piece of trauma that has transferred, which is interesting because that could create an interesting bond with the grandmother character and all that stuff. And I'm just seeing in my mind these representations of the culture in males who are coming toward this character and wanting this and just can't fathom the decision and the choices, which I think is really interesting. That could be really a fun thing to explore.
And I talk about a broken engagement. I had a scenario where I shared the backstory with a possible in-law. I wound up not marrying this gentleman, but during the course of it, I felt so desperate to get married. I was 35, I believe, at the time, that I allowed a lot of stupidity to happen. For instance, I paid for my own engagement ring. It was a scene in a jewelry store where he lets me pick out the ring that I want. And I pick up the ring, we go to the register, and he says, Paula, let me hold your card. And I'm like, what? His money was tied up with his mother somehow. And I knew it didn't make sense, but I gave him the card anyway.
See, I think, there's definitely, there's something there. And there's definitely an audience for it, because you could also lead this preach to the choir group down to the realities of how we're actually broken, because there's so much of this, drink the gospel, drink the Kool-Aid, and it all goes away. And that's been the opposite of my experience.
Exactly.
I agree. Much more aware, and I have to make conscious decisions. And especially in a situation like that, where you're just like, seriously, I've committed myself to you in this way, and this is what the deal is. And having that conversation audibly is something that you don't see very often. So I should actually read it. That sounds really good.
Yes, please do. I would love for you. There's another scene where I just knew I needed to be a principal. I felt I was a shoe-in for this job. And at the end of it, I didn't get the job. And I literally said out loud, Lord, I know you know the plan for my life, but would you give me a clue?
Yeah.
Because things were not falling the way I expected them to.
Yeah, I totally relate, because being a guy that believes and works in Hollywood and then doesn't judge the project, the person, or the content, just feels like, okay, if this is where you're placing me. And I've had some that I've absolutely just said, I can't be there.
Exactly.
Those that I said that was actually wrong. I ended up having to quit a job and go to that job. And it was one of the more profound experiences of my career. As crappy as the material was, profound things happened, and I said yes even after saying no. And that's the kind of relationship that doesn't get depicted in religious thing. They've turned it into a machine with music and all that stuff, as long as it's got that stamp and doesn't do certain things, which is just sickening to me. But yeah, I mean, I feel like, honestly, there's the McManus brothers, and they're creating a streaming platform. Something like that would be right up their alley, because they're now realizing they can't just do the cheesy Christian stuff. And I worked on a small project that they did recently that really impressed me, because they didn't put any of that gospelese in there. They just told a really great children's story that's, they empowered a very good writer, excellent director, and he also is a visual effects fanatic, and it's a very ambitious project, and I can't wait to see what they do.
That's awesome. Could you share your email with me so
Sure.
I can send you the books?
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat right now.
Thank you.
So,
but yes, go ahead.
It's a pretty interesting process, because that's literally how it starts. And then how do you, build relationships? What can you provide as a writer that would even get a filmmaker, producer, writer type person interested, and there's no given one way. It's just a matter of writing letters and emails and introducing yourself to people and doing things that are super uncomfortable. Just like, it's taken me forever, even though we had our Epiphanies book out there, to realize that I actually am now, literally thanks to you guys, a published author, and I can't own it yet because I feel like I'm not worthy and that I don't. But right now, like, as my film came out and I began to see that, oh my gosh, this is actually a legitimate thing. I've got a link tree now that is all the outlets of the film, It's got a description of me, you know, like all the branding stuff, everything that Anna talked about while I was, you know, in the pandemic here doing this didn't make sense because I was so uncomfortable with it. And I hadn't realized that, yeah, what I was working on for my memoir, and there are people that tell me that, oh, you should write a screenplay. I'm like, there is never going to be anybody interested in that. But my story is pretty, you know, bizarre how it has happened, but I just can't imagine that happening. But as the film came out and I realized again about this dissociation that had happened, my memoir became incredibly clear that all of this success has literally just been this. So it became not a memoir or not a bizarre, but it's really much more kind of the impact of these choices and how the pop culture couldn't rescue me. So sitting in that theater watching the movie that I produced and actually acted a small scene in after 35 years of not ever putting myself out there creatively as a writer or as an actor or anything, just making these things happen for people, I was totally unfulfilled and realized that I was completely caught up in something I didn't know I was caught up in. I still had these expectations, but it helped me shape who I see myself as now. And so now, you know, the description is Korey Pollard, storyteller, sometimes an actor, producer, DGM, UPM, first AD, author, and mentor. Like, without that whole painful process, without feeling like I had failed or given up on my memoir, I wouldn't have been able to even get these other things done, because that was actually the point, was getting all the way through and actually getting what you think you've reached for, and yet it's still completely empty. That's my memoir, you know, and the stuff I have is pretty prolific. It's stuff that people have seen, and it's so funny because people are like, you've got your shit together, you're so successful. Like, I didn't have a plan. I just showed up and got further and further away from what I wanted to do. And now today, in this relationship with this power greater than me, I'm like, hey, remember that part? How do I step to that? You know, and those are good stories, I think. So I feel like, you know, the reality of specifically like looking at your piece, it's just you coming up with a similar version of a plan the way that Tim is, and taking some ownership, and don't expect other people. That's what David Rockland and I are going to talk about on Monday. His book had an option. He's kept the film rights, and that's another thing, is if you do something other than, you know, self-publish, make sure you retain the film rights. And, you know, he was able to do that, and it's, you know, it'll probably cut a lot of people out of your, you know, Tim would be able to speak more to this, out of your cadre of options if you're looking to be published versus self-publishing. But that's also the world we're in. You know, the minute that music became digital and we stopped needing to go into studios to create, you know, it puts the power back into the hand of the creator. But the system still doesn't welcome us yet. But the more you can begin to do on your own and build your toolkit and build your support team, the better off you're going to be, because then you're just selling them something versus having them conscript you with money and promise you things that they aren't going to deliver on, which, you know, entertainment as a whole. When I moved to Los Angeles in 1988, there was a band that was big on MTV. Some of you might remember this, the Wall of Voodoo. I'm on a Mexican whoa radio. Okay, and there was a guy in the band that looked like one of the Monkees. He was the keyboard player. His name's Chaz. My first movie, I get hired as a swing gang set dresser, which is a glorified furniture mover. I move the furniture into a location. I move the furniture out because they never shoot the furniture that's there. Don't understand it. They pick a location. I hate this furniture. And so then I would come in with a team and we would move all that furniture out, put it in storage, go around town and fill up a truck with other furniture, put it in there, leave. They would shoot the movie, and we would come back and do the whole thing in reverse and return. We just did that all over town. That was my job. I jump in the cab of this truck with the guy who's going to be driving and kind of leading this team. I'm like, oh my God, that guy looks like Chaz from Wall of Voodoo. I said, you know, you look like Chaz from Wall of Voodoo. And he says, I am Chaz from Wall of Voodoo. I mean, literally on MTV at the time. And I'm like, what are you doing here? He says, a recording contract is a fucking mortgage. They have leveraged me. They took everything and didn't support us. And now I'm in debt to this company for our tour and for the recording contract. And it's so crazy because that was my first job. And then about 8 or 9 years ago, I worked with him again. He's still a swing gang set dresser, doesn't play music at all anymore. He's actually a lead man. He's that, and I'm now the first AD and moving into producing. It's just crazy to see that. Welcome to Hollywood. Welcome to entertainment. Welcome to the creative, thing. So it's good that we have people like Anna teaching us the stuff that we're teaching. It's fun to be a guy that's hopefully going to be a part of kind of blazing a new trail in an independent fashion for these kinds of projects, because the production part of it, 35 years of learning it, that's not a problem. Budgeting it for you is not a problem, and figured out the plan. But how do we get projects that come from just not the machine into the machine? That's the challenge, and that's what I love about Anna, how she's reinvented the way she's, offering and teaching, and how people are doing this. And we did this, that book got out there and it got on those lists. It literally did what she said it was going to do. So now I can't wait to get off my butt and get my other piece done and see what happens for that, and keep creating. And hopefully Tim's piece will come into something that we can run around town with by attaching. So that's another thing, is not only is it nice to have a good screenwriter and that stuff, but as you have your sights on things, Paula, in your mind, is there a magical person, the dream person that would play your role? And then you do that, and you have the A, the B, and the C, and you manifest. It's moving toward, like, what are the odds that you would think something, and then you meet a person that knows the person, or you meet the person. Like, that's happened to me over and over and over in my career. And that's, to me, the hand of that power, I believe, and that's got God through Christ that does that.
Amen, amen. Leanne has the perfect person. What's her name again, Leanne? Leanne is personal friends with someone. They rented her house when they were shooting a movie in Georgia.
Oh, nice.
What's her name?
Heather Headley. She's the Trinidadian, the Lion King on Tony Award winning. She does Sweet Magnolias, and she did Aretha.
Oh, right on. Yeah, that's
she'd be perfect.
Not a bad, and again, there's no reason that can't be something that gets approached when you have something tangible,
Totally godlike. She actually rented my house while she was filming Steel Magnolias a couple years ago, and she's just the salt of the earth.
Nice. Isn't it amazing when you run into people like that? There are a bunch of them, and then there's other ones you're just like, what? Do you really think?
And she's a devout Christian with her New York Jets ex-husband, so that's a big deal for them.
That actually, you see, exactly, there it is. And I'll bet if there was a dive done, that she probably has a development situation, and she had, and that's the kind of stuff. And these are the conversations that lead toward action steps that allow you to, get something going. But you've got to start by getting your synopsis and your elevator pitch, they call it, and just boiling it down to just grab a person. And because trauma is a kind of big subject right now, I'd figure out how to weave that into your situation as being a part of the triggering and the healing, like generational healing through it. Because I'm imagining that there was a lot of that through conversations with you and your family. I look forward to reading it to see, because I think I can understand where this goes, knowing what I know about healing and how those things seem to happen if in that faith way. That's super cool.
Thanks.
Chris, do you want to share a little bit about your fits and starts so that people can understand what a 10-year process looks like? I'd love to hear that again. I love all this.
So the book 9 Lives was written in 2009. Some friends of mine who are musicians wrote a musical that was in 2011, two CDs, 39 songs.
Which is super fun.
And it's really good if you haven't looked. It's on Spotify and Apple and all that. It's called 9 Lives, a musical story of New Orleans or something like that. And the book is called 9 Lives by Dan Baum, a New Yorker writer. We tried to get it on Broadway. We had connections with the Public Theater in New York. Oscar Eustace, I think his name is. And it failed. We couldn't do it. It never got to Broadway, never got to any theater in New York. Kept trying, and then it lay dormant for a few years. And just last year, we came up with the idea of trying to do a limited miniseries instead of trying to cram 9 characters and 40 years of story into 2 hours. Now we can do it in 10 hours.
Yep, which is such a beautiful thing. And
Yeah.
that's why I was curious about your theory, but I think you're right about it being a feature, because the beauty of the details that can be done in a 10-hour thing, but it's got to have a little bit more for some people. The fact that your piece has the music will be appealing enough, because the series Nashville that I did had nothing to do with the actual show. It was a machine for the music and the singer-songwriters that came to be a part of it. And literally each of those cast members are still touring, doing that stuff and their own original work now, and the network and the studio still have a piece of that because they're a part of that. So those are the things you look at behind, what's out there, and yours is poised beautifully for that, because it's one of those timeless musicals that can go on and on and on.
Yeah. I mean, I'm, even though I'm not in the Hollywood business, I mean, I've grown up in LA, lived here all my life, and certainly have lots of friends who are in the business, and I'm well aware that it's hard to get things done, and most of the time things don't get done.
Yeah.
And some of the things that get done are shit. And so
I've worked on a lot of shit.
Right. So I mean, my feeling is, and I'm not vested in this. I mean, I put in a little money, but not a lot. So for me, it's fun. If I was doing this as my livelihood, I might think differently about it, but I'm not. I'm doing this because this is fun. I want to see if we can do it. And if it's successful, great. And if it's not successful, the journey is already fun.
Yep. And that's the key. There's a desperation that surrounds people that obsess with this one thing, and it's the well-rounded that seem to do better here. I mean, there's clearly in Hollywood and a lot of these entertainment things, it has also to do with affluence, and people that come out here to do it already have money. They're not needing to do this to survive. And I'm a guy that's had to make my living doing what I do for so long, and I'm now trying to understand how to live a life, take these skills that I've learned and turn it into something that affords me a creative life versus just doing it for this corporations over and over and over. It's not easy, but man, I'm so grateful to be on this journey, because I've been so fortunate. I just look at the stuff that I've been involved in, and now having this little published piece, and you guys dragging me out to have that experience with David, and writing under pressure and winning that moment. And I don't have any expectation that I'm going to win anything, but now I'm engaging in things that push me in that direction, instead of running away and feeling like a failure because I didn't finish. But it just wrote itself by getting the movie premiered and having that experience. Now I understand what I'm needing to write, and now Tim and I have just taken this holiday break, and it's hard. We haven't gotten back together, and I'm a little bit mad at myself, but I know it's coming and the time is right. And this invitation to share this way, it just continues to affirm that I'm walking in the direction that I need to, and that's what I think is so beautiful about what Anna created here. It was so funny because she called me when the pandemic. She was like, "I've got to give you your money back." And I'm like, "No, hang on to my money, because I need to do this, and especially now that we're going to be shut down. So what can we do? How can we, engage? Like, how can she still has my money? I'm still paying for this as well. I'm like, I need to start doing something with this." But it's amazing, to think that this is now a full circle, come back around. Sitting in the group during the pandemic, I thought I'd never work again. I had given up. I did not want to go back into what it is. And now I'm heading toward production management instead of first ADing, because I can have a little more control over that to be my, golden handcuff, or how to make the money. And it's not easy transitioning, because the world only sees you as one thing and all that. But I get to do that, and I'm, now engaging creatively at the same time. And it's pretty exciting stuff, the process. I'm so grateful that Anna created this, and that a bunch of you are still hanging here and doing it. It's really exciting. Thanks for letting me come and blather. I hope something made sense, and please ask any questions at all. This is one of those things. There's no stupid question except the one you didn't ask. Cricket.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I hear you now.
Oh, sorry. I want to see if you agree with this. So it's more like a comment, I guess, than a question. But good stories are timeless and good stories are precious and good stories, I believe, need to be told. I mean, Barbara, you and I have something in common, that we went through personal tragedies that led to memoir. And I'm willing to bet you had to get that book out, just like you're going to get your second book out. I had to get my book out. I don't think, those of you who have read my book, I'm not a great writer. I'm a good writer, but I'm not a great writer. But I worked my fucking ass off getting that book out because I had to. And I guess that's the comment I want to make, is that it takes a lot of work to get any of these things done, whether it's books or movies, or it's just some of it's just sweat, just doing the work.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. And that's what's so hard, is to look at, I'm literally going to tear up when I say this, the amount of blood, sweat, and tears I've put into other people's shit. And I've worked on some really good shit. You know, I mean, like, meaning good, but at the same time, that amount of energy, and yet I can't seem to consistently invest in myself, is a part of my problem. And it's a part of the lingering stuff from trauma. And it's the thing that, I'm not a guy that gets slapped, slain in the spirit and stands up healed. I'm a guy that gets to go through the process and build a relationship with this God I believe in, and myself, in order to hopefully have a victory that makes sense and leads others to this. It's this other thinking that's terrible. It's this fast, buck. It's this overnight hit. It's the work. It's the sweat. That's what is the point. The journey, with that cheese, that's the, journey, not the destination. And that's 100% my experience on each level. But I look back and I struggle to not let regret or remorse take over for the amount of time I spent dissociating from the healing. But I look at the track record and look at that IMDb list, and when I go to a speaking engagement and they talk about the things that I've worked on, I literally feel like I go, who worked on all that? I was there, because I'm blind to it, because I'm a problem solver. It's not about the star. It's not about it's been about dissociating and hiding and solving everybody else's problems codependently. My character defects and my brokenness became a career, which is crazy. And I don't want to live like that anymore. And so now, how do I apply that blood, sweat, and tears and have the experience that you're talking about? It has happened for me in the acting realm. It's back. I now understand what was said to me when I was 16, 17, 18 and studying it, but not pursuing it. These people say, yeah, I just can't not do it. I have to do it. I'm so driven. Like, once I got to do the scene in our movie and I saw it on the big screen and I had the reactions of other people, my favorite part of it was people who know me well and people who do that for a living sat in a room with me, watched the scene I was in. I exited the room and the two of them went, wait, that was you. I'm like, oh yeah, that happened. That's what I live for. It's not about me. It's about becoming the thing that I need to become. But that's also scary, because that's how I've lived my whole life, is being this person that becomes the person that you need, the hero that this. So it's been an interesting journey, but to be there and to feel like I'm so close with this book having to come out, because it shares this in a way. And the stuff that I got to read when I did the Rockland thing, the reading last time about realizing where that came from as a child. Like, I'm starting to see that I get to put it out, and I have to, and I hope that it actually has an impact on others. It's not about me, and that feels good, to actually come to those terms. If that kind of addressed what you were saying, Chris, because it is the work, and you've got to love it, or you can't imagine doing it.
Either loving it or just knowing you have to do it.
Yeah.
There's some internal drive.
Yeah, well, it all comes from inside for me too, and that's what's so funny about it. Even the stuff that is not mine, it's such an internal drive for me when people say, we can't do it, it's not possible. Like, there's always a way to think about something, and that's, the skill set that I've been given that allows me to apply that critical thinking to literally anything. It's not just movies and TV shows, and that's what I love, is realizing I'm not just stuck in that world. Now, how do I get to that next,
Yeah, it's really important too to just not give up at any point of the process. In other words, I mean, I played in like a bar band that almost made it because we never gave up. And there's, then again, like, 3 years later, we're still playing the same shitty bar. It's easy to say I quit, I pack it in. I think getting a project done into screen or series is very similar to getting a book in with an agent or a book in with a major publisher, because unknowns like us need the side door. We need the self-publisher. We need the small press. And the same with what Korey's talking about. You need the side door. I mean, there are very few Richard Hooker stories. Now, Richard Hooker wrote the novel MASH, and Richard Hooker's novel for MASH ended up being rejected by 22 publishers before he got the book out. And you all know what happened after the book came out, the MASH movie, the MASH TV series. So like the folks that kind of stick with it and never give up and let kind of the rejection roll off them, it's not necessarily that your work is bad. It's not bad. It's just sometimes it's the opportunity, or you got the right person to read it on the right day.
Yep. That's more what it is than any. I mean, look at J.K. Rowling and how many times that Harry Potter stuff was turned down. And now those MASH and that have become these kind of examples. And they're things that I like to use in pitch conversations, to put someone off by going, man, wouldn't want to be one of those guys that turned that down, would you? And then leave it with that. And it's funny how that can get people uncomfortable, and they won't necessarily write you off yet. And it's a long process of figuring out, but again, all of it starts with the hook. All of it starts with what Chris is talking about, that you have to do this, and that when you're putting this thing together, you don't want to just put together a good pitch. You don't want to just put together a good idea, but you want to have it so ingrained in you that when you're meeting with someone, they're like, not only is this a great idea, but you are clearly the person that we need to get involved with to do it, because you see it so clearly and it's, so ingrained within you. And that's the challenge. And Paula, what you just wrote in there, yeah, absolutely should. And not only should you, I don't know if you guys saw in the chat, but she's like, I love to act, and I, should play a small part in it as well. And there's no reason that with today, the way that things are, that you can't shoot that scene with you in the mirror, the thing that you feel like is the opening, and just do these things for yourself creatively that you can use as part of a pitch to just give to a writer that you think you might meet a kid that's in a writing program that is right in the same boat as you are. She's trying to do the same thing and wants to write a screenplay about something. There's so many ways to look at this and to try to approach it. And like literally the film that I produced was produced using a workforce development educational concept where I was able to save money, not by slave labor, but literally teaching the prep of the film. So there's like so many ways to approach getting yourself a presentation piece for this by involving others and turning it into an educational opportunity. And it's just super important. Let's see that's what you said. I'm reading what you said here. Huh? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so if your university has a film department, you might want to see if there's something that can be done, an adaptation of your piece into a screenplay, as if you become friends with one of the professors. I mean, that is 100% the world I'm talking about, and I'd love to engage and talk about that, and then turn it into a message that you can actually then produce a presentation piece. Because what I think is missing most from these film programs and these writing programs is they don't encourage these people to come in with a vision. They teach them to run around together and make movies in ways that no one makes them, because that's how you have to make them in that world. Except if you understood the structure, which is what I teach when I go into these environments, you would then understand how to structure it and how you don't cross-pollinate certain roles on the sets and understand why, so that if you were faced being in the real environment, you would understand what those jobs were and you could do those jobs. And that's what I believe they should be training them to do, not putting them in debt and giving them a piece of paper that tells them they're going to be the next producer, writer, and director, Spielberg guy. Unrealistic and foolish and just wrong. But teaching them practical skills that allow them to come in with an idea and leave with a presentation piece that's the thing they would want to be doing, the story they want to tell, not just make a bunch of stuff based on a prompt from a teacher. That's silly to me. It's a waste of energy, money, and time, and it's not driving anybody toward a goal. So if you're in an environment where that is, feasible, that will be a fun thing. And feel free to email me. We can just engage on concepts about what that looks like. And I end up then going and teaching these classes about how to schedule that very script that was written to do the thing. And I've had kids come here to Los Angeles in a thing called Los Angeles Film Studies program. I taught a production program in Nashville as an adjunct instructor, which is crazy because I'm not even college educated, and taught them how to schedule their own movies. Everybody had their own short film, and we did that. And then the next summer, we took an alumni script that was not related to any of that cohort and shot it at this program out here that has all the equipment and had a location, and we literally produced a short film. And there's no reason something like that couldn't be done as a presentation piece for your message and then handed to people going, hey, we could make this into a feature film. Pretty crazy stuff. Well, thanks, guys. I can't believe it's already 2. Yeah, I can talk forever.
I'm excited.